Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope everyone getting well by the grace of Almighty Allah. Welcome to another day of learning. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I welcome everyone to our Institution of Global Professional Fee International webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. And I feel honored to host this webinar, and it's my delight to welcome you all to our Institution of Global Professional free webinar. Once again, I am Kamrul, coordinator of IGP from Bangladesh. Thank you again all for joining with us in this marvelous session, and I hope you stay with us till end. And don't forget to tag, share, and mention your friends in the comments. And I request everyone to share this webinar in your newsfeed and social media because your attachment encourages us to do better and best services to our lovely audience. Because our mission is to empower our youth. So stay with us by your support. Before we have completed our 769 webinars successfully. Now I will be presenting webinar number 770, and the topic is conducting online distance learning. Today we have a speaker from Philippines. Today our speaker name is Sir Arnold Ryan Mercado. He is a teacher from Anthopoli City Senior High School. He is also Microsoft Innovative Educator, and he is Supreme Student Government Advisor, and finally he is the course of Science and Social Science. Let's welcome our speaker to the screen. Hello, sir.
Hello po, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, open your camera, please.
Welcome to IGP and welcome participants to all the participants around the world who wants to be part of this.
Sir,
Yes,
sir, open your camera, please.
again, sir.
Open your camera.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you can start your presentation now.
Okay, thank you. So here's my topic, everyone. It's all about conducting assessments on online distance learning. So without further ado, let's start this presentation. For our terminal objective for today, our main objective is to relate understanding of the codification of assessment and positive feedback of assessment to the written and performance assessment in different learning delivery modalities. Another, we will identify these different objectives. First is define codification of assessment. Another is explain assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment for learning and its major roles in the new normal. Another is to identify the pros and cons of the given types of tests and giving up feedback. Number 4, draw connections among ideas of the principles of assessment in terms of validity, practicality, reliability, and the impact. Then the fifth objective is to recognize the importance of giving schedule, feedback developmental rubric to the different written and performance in various learning delivery modalities. So, let's start this presentation. So I have a simple question to all the participants and viewers who are watching now. How's everyone doing? It's been a long week for us all up here since here in our country where we are already establishing the startup classes, and hopefully every educators and teachers around the world will be equipped with enough knowledge with this webinar about conducting online education. So let us first define the distance learning teaching strategies. So distance education takes place when a teacher and the students are separated by the physical distance and the technology itself. Example, the voice, the video, the data, and the print. Often in concert with face-to-face communication is used to bridge the instructional gap. The online learning from a distance has become a go-to method of the education, especially as we adjust to the new circumstances presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been 2 years that we have been part of the COVID-19 pandemic. Distance learning is an educational process where the students or the learners receive the different instructions through online classes, video recordings, video conferencing, or any other audio or visual technology medium. It also enables the people to receive the education without having to be physically present in a classroom. Properly, this distance learning or the online education was designed. Learning programs can be a very convenient and effective way to acquire more education. This may seem difficult at first without the students and teachers interacting in a classroom, but people enrolled in a distance learning programs can learn just as much away from a classroom as in one. Distance learning and education are interchangeable terms. Distance learning is not a recent phenomenon. The origin of the distance learning can be traced back to the advent of the modern postal system and of course the mass production of printed publications, which made it possible to spread the information rapidly throughout the world. Is distance education effective? These are some of the questions of some educators and other people in the field of education in terms of distance education. Many educators ask if distance students learn as much as students receiving traditional face-to-face instruction. Research indicates that when the method and the technologies used are appropriate to the instructional tasks, there is a student-to-student interaction, and when there is timely teacher-to-student feedback. Distance learning has made education more accessible to larger groups of people. It is really convenient way to obtain work experience while completing college or other vocational training. Many organizations such as the military, the large corporations, and of course the government agencies rely on the distance education to train service members and employees. Education has has been changed as communication technology has revolutionized society. In most cases, education or the specialist training is a requirement for most high-paid jobs. Yes, it's true. Most high-paid jobs required a training in terms of online education. The availability of the internet has increased the number of online courses. So who uses this distance learning? More students today or more learners today are taking advantage of the distance learning, the different programs. Also, the working professionals, the high school students, it's either junior high school or the senior high school students, and even the traditional college students enroll in distance learning classes. Companies and other organizations frequently utilize distance learning programs to train the employees. There are many reasons why people enroll in distance learning programs, such as students living in rural areas or those unable to attend traditional classes utilize this distance learning. Students from all over the world can enroll in online courses offered at specific colleges or schools or academy. Companies utilize distance learning programs to train employees, especially those working in distance region. Now, how is distance education delivered? there's a lot of means to deliver the distance education. First is a wide range of technological options, such as the teleconferencing, and there are types of categories where we can give the distance education to all the learners. First is the voice. Using the voice, such as instructional audio tool, it includes the interactive technologies of the telephone, the audio conferencing, the shortwave radio. Can be passive or one-way radio, but this audio tool includes the tapes and the radio. Another means is by means of the video, which is one of the trends today. Video as instructional video tools include still images such as the slides, pre-produced moving images such as the film, the videotape, and the real-time moving images combined with audio conferencing or one-way or two-way two-way audio. These are all examples of a video in online education. The data. Computers send and receive information electronically. For this reason, the term data is used for describe this broad category of instructional tools. The computer applications for distance education are varied and include such as the CAI or the CAI or the computer assisted instruction, wherein it uses the computer as a self-contained teaching machine to present individual lessons. We also have the CMI, or the computer managed instruction. It uses the computer to organize instruction and track the students' records and progress. The instruction itself need not be delivered via a computer, although CAI is often combined with CMI. Another, the CME, or the Computer Mediated Education. It describes computer applications that facilitate the delivery of instruction. Example, email or the electronic mail, the fax machines, the real-time computer conferencing, and the World Wide Web applications. Another one is the print, a traditional one, but it is a foundational element of distance education programs and the basis from which all other delivery systems have evolved. Various print formats are available, including the textbooks, the study guides, the workbooks, and case studies. Now, the question is, which technology is the best? There are many different types of technology which are being utilized to enhance the online learning. Special computer programs with high-speed internet and webcam broadcasting technology are just a few of modern technologies utilized in distance learning. As a result, learning opportunities that never existed for people living in distant or rural areas can obtain a college education or specialized job training. It's not uncommon for a student living in rural region, example, in a place of Africa or South Dakota, to complete a course offered by a college in California, for example. So therefore, my dear participants, the students often interact with teachers using video conferencing, satellite, and internet technology. They can also communicate with other students enrolled in the same course using modern telecommunications technology. Since our learners today can complete courses whenever the internet is accessible, many often take time during a work break or while staying in a hotel during a business trip to complete their schoolwork. The flexibility of distance learning is one of the main appeals of this program. Again, my dear participants, my dear viewers and listeners, there's a lot of technology that can be used to deliver online education. It's up to us as teachers, as educators, how to be flexible to deliver the modality and, of course, to our learners. For example, a strong print component can provide much of the basic instructional content in the form of a course text, as well as readings and day-to-day schedule. Interactive audio or video conferencing can provide real-time, face-to-face, or voice-to-voice interaction. This is also an excellent and cost-effective way to incorporate guest speakers and content experts. We also have the computer conferencing or the electronic mail, communication to one or more class members. It can also be used to increase interaction among the students or learners. It can also be used to send the messages, assignment feedback, and other targeted classes or learners. Another one is the pre-recorded videotapes can be used to present class lectures and visually oriented content. The faxed can be used to distribute assignments, last-minute announcements, or to receive student assignments and to provide timely feedback. Using this integrated um, approach, the educator's task is to carefully select among the technological options. Our main goal here is to build a mix of instructional media, meeting the needs of the learner in a manner that is instructionally effective and economically prudent or comfortable to our learners. Now, is it effective? Effective distance education programs begin with careful planning and, of course, focused understanding of the course requirements and the students' needs. Since distance learning is slowly becoming a popular to complete the college or job training, or many people still have reservations about it. The details provided are really important to them. Example, students usually interact with classmates and teachers in chat rooms and other instant messaging services. This makes it possible to ask questions and share the comments without sitting in a classroom. Teacher lectures are frequently broadcast online, and many students or learners and teachers stay in touch via conference calling technology. Another one is the group work is completed in chat rooms and special rooms on websites. Students also use email, instant messaging, and web broadcasting technology to discuss projects ideas with classmates. The course assignments completed by the students are completed on a website or submitted as email attachment. Students are usually not permitted to submit work completed on websites after due dates. So that's one way how to give discipline to our learners. The most reference materials such as the documents and the books are accessible online for the students. As a result, our students or learners usually do not have to visit the libraries just to complete traditional research. Many of the books students needs are scanned and of course they are placed online. The questions for the instructors or for the teachers can be asked over the phone, through an email, or in a chat room. Instant messaging technology is becoming a very popular way for the learners and teachers to interact. Working professionals also stay at home, and other people unable to attend college on a campus or school are utilizing distance learning programs to acquire more education or job training. There are many key players in distance education. Of course, we have the students since their primary role is to learn. This is the task which requires the motivation, the planning, and the ability to analyze and apply the instructional content being taught. When instruction is delivered at a distance, additional challenges result because the learners are often separated from others sharing their backgrounds and interests, have few, if any, opportunities to interact with their teachers outside of the class, and must rely on technological or technical linkages to bridge the gap separating class participants. Another player in distance education which has a major big role is the faculty. The success of any distance education effort rests squarely on the shoulders of the faculty. In a traditional classroom setting, the teacher's responsibility includes assembling course content and developing an understanding of the student's need. Special challenges confront those teaching at a distance. Of course, the faculty here should be a facilitator. You're giving the instruction as a bridge between the students and the teacher or the instructor. To be effective, a facilitator must understand the students being served and the instructors or the teacher's expectations. Most importantly, the facilitator must be willing to follow the directive established by the teacher. Another is the support staff. These individuals are the silent heroes of the distance education enterprise and ensure that the numerous details required for programs such success are dealt with effectively. Most successful distance education programs consolidate support service functions to include students' registration, materials duplication, and distribution, the textbook ordering, the securing of the copyright clearances, the facilities schedule, managing the technical resources. Therefore, these are the major tasks of the support staff. The administrators, effective distance education. Administrators are more than the idea people. They are the consensus builders, decision makers, and of course the referees. They work closely with technical and support service personnel, ensuring that technological resources are effectively deployed to further the institution's academic mission. One important ingredient in online education is what we call the flexibility. Distance learning should be very flexible. Although distance learning can fit into anyone's schedule, students or the learners must take the initiative to study and, of course, complete their task. Distance learning programs are not easy or automatic, so lazy students will probably not successfully complete the course they will be enrolled. However, even students that are so busy or have numerous responsibilities should find the time to study because of the flexibility of these programs. Another is the affordability or the no cost or little cost of a form of distance learning. For example, almost of the homes in Ukraine have televisions and many are connected to a cable TV service. For these homes, it is relatively easy for the students to watch a public broadcast television show or educational documentary. In addition, almost all homes have access to a telephone or the internet, enabling the use of voicemail and audio conferencing. The interactivity, the contrary to popular opinion, distance learning courses can offer increased interactions with the learners. In particular, introverted students who are too shy to ask questions in class will often open up when provided the opportunity to interact via email or other individualized means. Through the increased interaction, teachers can better meet individual students or learners' needs. Of course, another is the equity. Educational inequity is a major issue in the other countries. Rural schools often have less contact with educational trends, fewer qualified teachers, and more need for technology. Distance learning offers great potential for alleviating these issues and has been employed very effectively in Canada and Australia. Therefore, my dear participants, we can also have this kind of modality, and there's a great possibility that we can achieve the same employed in different countries around the globe. Assessment for a distance learning setup. How should we do it? Actually, it's really hard to answer now, but because of the following reasons. Here in our country, in the Philippines, there is only a few number of schools conducting distance learning during the pandemic. Everything is novel for us. The module alone will take time. Then, will individual learning be effective in the type of learning culture we have? Could that also influence the assessment? So these are just some questions by the teachers or the educators in the field. The baptism of fire. Baptism by fire is a common phrase commonly used to describe a person or employee who is learning something the hard way through a challenge or difficulty. In many cases, someone who starts a new job must undergo a baptism by fire, meaning they must immediately deal with one or more difficult situations. We have the following characteristics. First is the learning by doing through authentic experiences. So what is authentic experience or learning? Authentic learning, or what we call the active learning, is a real life learning. It is a style of learning that encourages students to create a tangible, useful, quality product outcome to be shared with their world. Connecting the teacher's lessons to a real world situation, issues, and problems. That's the main core of authentic learning. In other words, authentic learning requires students to engage in meaningful activities and actively about what is they are planning. It is the opposite of the passive teacher-led classroom, of course, in which the learners or the students memorize and then um, perform the said task on what they heard or what they saw. Authentic learning makes sure concepts relevant to students so that they can retain the information at hand, and of course the pivot the knowledge to real world situations involves centering the learners and their ideas while nurturing them along the educational journey. Low stakes assessments, constructive feedback, as well as assessment design that enables them to be student instructor relationship. So, why am I discussing the authentic learning? Authentic learning is a student sitting at a desk, taking notes and getting the curriculum content using a minute around of their potential. In general, these are the students learn to sit quietly, respond in turn, follow the instructions, and complete tests for a control teacher. Without relevance, personal connection, multisensory engagement, and the purpose itself consists of the content-driven curricula, which begins to evaporate once the test has been taken. So why is authentic learning important? Of course, authentic learning is important. Education, according to Horace Mann, is a great equalizer. Our world has changed, and it's safe to say a prepared student is one with the ability to communicate original ideas. An important characteristic of authentic learning is that there are multiple possible outcomes or solutions to a problem rather than a single correct answer. This can also encourage our learners to ask questions and think outside the box. Additionally, the authentic learning, it fosters intrinsic motivation, which is to say that behavior driven by the internal rewards because the nature of the work itself is satisfying. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, involves engagement based on external rewards or to avoid punishment. Among teachers or educators now, the main goal is to foster a love of learning for its own merits. And authentic learning is critical to engendering such intrinsic motivation. Foster, let's go with number 2. Foster self-discovery. In foster self-discovery is the process of understanding your true self, your values, your needs, your wants, and even your favorite food. You might have naturally learned some of these things about yourself or the over the time. Yet for a lot of people, we have a way of losing touch with our lovely and the values and of course the preferences. Even from ourselves, going deeper into self-discovery can transform the lives of our learners or students. Reflective learning. Of course, online education is reflective. Reflective learning typically involves looking back at something, a past experience or idea, and critically analyzing the event or the place of gathering. By looking at successful and unsuccessful aspects of experience, reflection will help the learners or the students learn from their past experiences. And of course, turn the surface learning into deep learning. Apart from helping the learners to develop greater self awareness, reflective learning helps students identify gaps in their learning routine, and areas for improvement. Develop new skills to develop greater self-awareness. That's for number 3. Reflective learning happens help is to help the students and identify the gaps in their learning and areas for improvement. Develop new skills. Number 4, attitudes and way of thinking. Successful distance learning students are self-disciplined, self-motivated, prepared, with good readers, good organizers, and have a good time management skills. So let me read a quote from Self-Motivation. It may go without saying, but being a successful student also includes getting adequate sleep, eating healthy, and drinking water, exercising, and overall prioritizing your time. Your physical and mental well-being is of first importance, and self-discipline and self-motivation. Teachers should become more enthusiastic. Monitoring students will become purposeful, more time to prepare, and of course enhances the quality of instruction. Teachers become more enthusiastic. Through being an enthusiastic teacher, the learners are more engaged, more willing to contribute in class discussions, and more willing to discuss any problems or concerns with a module. The team is also has an impact. It also has an impact. Then, as a result of staff enthusiasm, students are more committed to their studies and make the most of their time at university or schools. Communicate your enthusiasm using tone of voice and the body language, of course, and the eye contact which the learners really needs. And of course, sentiments, your you're the thing about that really fascinates me about this. That came from another writer. And another, the monitoring students will become purposeful. Now, let's talk about the development of modules. Here in our country, in the Philippines, since many of our learners cannot afford to buy a PC or personal computer or laptop, we decided to give them modules and, of course, let them have the tablets. In that way, they will just compile all of the outputs in one device or even in their storage clouds, like for example the Google Drive, the Microsoft Drive, and many more. Because of those events last 2 years, DepEd, Department of Education here in our country, ensures that all learners have the access to quality basic education for the school year 2021 to 2022, with face-to-face classes still prohibited due to public health situations. Then the SLMS, or the self-learning modules, it's an alternative learning delivery modality, are in place to place the needs, the situations, and of course the resources of each and every learner or students, the needs. And another, the learners and the teachers will cover all the bases in ensuring the basic education. It will also be accessible, posted by the COVID-19. Then, of course, the self-learning modules are delivered in printed formats to schools that are located in different far-flung areas, the provinces, and communities without access to the internet or electricity. For household with gadgets and devices, the Department of Education here in the Philippines has announced the SLMS, or self-learning modules, can also be accessed online or offline. Our former Secretary of Education told us that the self-learning modules can also be accessed online or offline. Next slide. So what is assessment? It came from the word asidere, meaning to sit with. In the assessment one is supposed to sit with the learner. This implies that it is something we do to meet to achieve the access for the students and of course for our learners. So what's the meaning of assessment? In education, the term assessment refers to the wide variety of methods that the educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness. And of course, to measure the readiness, the learning progress skills, acquisition, or the educational needs of students or learners. While assessment are often equated with traditional tests, especially the standardized tests developed by testing companies and administered to the large populations or of students, educators use a diverse array of the assessment tools and methods to measure everything from a 4-year-old example, 4-year-old using the online education. The 4-year-old kid will have the readiness for kindergarten and of course to their 12th grade or grade 12 level as part of their development. Another, just as the academic lessons have different functions, assessments are the assessments are of course these are part of their learning and the level of knowledge as a student already has about the concept or skill by the teacher is planning to teach, or the ability to comprehend, to analyze the different types of texts and readings. Assessments also are used to identify the individual student weaknesses and the strengths so that the educators can provide specialized academic support, educational programming, or social services. In addition, the assessments are developed by a wide array of groups and individuals, such as teachers, district administrators, universities, private companies, the state departments of education, and the groups that include a combination of these individuals and institutions. All right, the difference between the three, the assessment versus the evaluation versus the diagnosis. Let's have first the assessment. Assessment is defined as the process of collecting or appraising something or someone. It talks about also about the act of gauging the quality, the value, or the importance. It also focuses on making a judgment about the values, the number of um, performance of someone or something. Assessment is made to identify the level of performance of a learner or the student. Assessment is also the one way to endorse to our learners that the evaluation performed to determine are attained. The basic difference between assessment and evaluation is it lies in the assignment lies on the orientation. Example, while the assessment is a process oriented, evaluation is product oriented. The another one is the evaluation is product oriented. The therefore the term evaluation can be in the form of comparison chart, definition, key differences, and of course the conclusion. The definition of assessment. Assessment is defined as a methodological way of acquiring, reviewing, and using the information about something or someone so as to make this improvement where necessary. The term is to interpret in a variety of ways. Example, the education, the psychological, the financial, the taxation, human resource, and so on, and many more. So, codification of assessments. covidification of education as the adaptive move or response of academic institutions, refiguring the content, the delivery process, and the models of assessment, capitalizing on available technology. I'm talking about the infrastructure or the different means. It can be synchronous or asynchronous that are accessible to both teachers and learners at home to ensure only the achievement of a of agreed upon learning standards and competencies. Strategies for the implementation of modular instruction. Module is a form of self-instructional package and thus regarded as relatively recent phenomena. It enables the learner to have control over his learning and accepts greater responsibility for learning. So the covidification of education as the adaptive move or response of the academic institutions to reconfigure the content, delivery process, the modes of assessment, the capitalizing on available technology, infrastructure, and the means. It can be teachers or the students or learners at home, just to ensure the achievement of uh, ag- ag- agreement upon learning standards and competencies. So here's my next slide. The three modes of assessment. First is the assessment of learning, wherein you can see on your screens the word summative tests. Then assessment for learning and formative tests. The last one is assessment as learning reflective tests, making assignment as an integral part of the daily, let's say for example, mathematics instruction is a challenge. Of course, it requires planning, specific ways to use the assignments and discussions to discover that the students can do and do, not just to understand. It also requires them, not the teachers, to be prepared to deal with students' responses. Merely spotting when students are incorrect in relative easy compared with understanding the the reasons behind their errors. The latter demands the careful attention and a deep knowledge of the mathematics concepts and principles that um, the students are learning, of course. And of course, just to meet the needs of the students who are eager for more challenges and to provide intervention for those who are struggling. Assessment, of course, is integral to the teaching learning process to facilitate students' learning and improving instructions. And of course, it can take away a variety of forms. Classroom assessment and generally divided into three types: the assessment for um, learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. Now let's talk about the meaning of each word on your screens. Assessment of learning is the snapshot in time that lets the teachers, the students, and their parents know how the will students has completed the learning tasks and the activities. It provides more information about students' achievement, while it provides information about students' achievement. While it provides useful reporting information, the information it is often has little effect on learning. Assessment of learning. Assessment of learning is the assessment that becomes public or in trend. Assessment of learning are typically they are typically administered at the end of a unit or grading period and evaluate a student's understanding by comparing on his or her achievement against a class or district or nationwide. The benchmark or the standard as part of our school institution, we are in charge with some assessment of learning activities. Then another one is the assessment for learning that the emphasis shifts from summative to formative assessment in assessment for learning. And the assessment for learning happens during the learning, often more than once rather than the end. The assessment for learning also described as assessment as learning, wherein the student's comprehension and the understanding of a skill or lesson during the learning and teaching process. According to my source, the Eberly Center at Carnegie Mellon, this provides educators with ongoing feedback and allows them to identify at-risk students early, adjust instructions accordingly and immediately, and of course, monitor the students' progress. Frequently, progress monitoring is an example of assessment for learning, which where a student academic performance is regularly assessed between benchmarks to determine if the current instruction and intervention is positively impacting the student's achievement or adjustments need to be implemented. The assessment for learning, also known as formative assessment, refers to any assessment activity that guides learning. So what are the different types of assessment for learning? One is the summative assessment. Teachers use summative assessment when they are assessing how far a child has come and what they have achieved. Examples include are the GSCEs or the topic tests and the A-level examinations. Another one is the formative assessment or the AFL, which shapes learning. The most effective form of formative assessment takes place live, minute by minute, day by day. It is assessment that takes place while students are still engaged in the learning. Formative assessment allows students to identify and address any misconceptions before their summative assessments. What is the role of the teacher in terms of assessment for learning? Our main role here, my dear participants, is to plan and manage the assessment. And one aspect of our role is to make accurate and productive use of assessment. They then use their findings to inform the next steps, both their own and the pupils. All right. Let's proceed with the next part. Assessment as learning. Assessment as learning. Throughout this process, our learners are able to learn about themselves as learners and become aware of how they learn, become mega cognitive. When we say mega cognitive, knowledge of one's own thought processes. Students reflect on their work on a regular basis, usually through self and peer assessment, and decide, often with the help of the teacher, particularly in the early stages, what their next learning will be. Assessment as learning helps students to take more responsibility for their own learning and monitoring future directions. Therefore, my dear participants, assessment as learning happens when students reflect on and monitor their progress to inform their future learning goals. And the actualization is really important as part of the assessment. The frequency, we should consider the frequency on how many times we will oversee their work, the difficulty, the level of difficulty, is it easy, average, or difficult, the scheduling, and of course, their feedbacks and our feedbacks also. The actualization is really important as one of the principles of assessment. Of course, the resources, how is the resources? Is it practical? What should I measure? Will my test help me measure that or the validity? Are my results consistent? Will the other teachers score the same way? Or the reliability? How will the use of this test affect the stakeholders or the impact? So again, it only leads to one, the assessment. And these assessments are always given during the online learning. Of course, the actualization, the practicality is really important. You should be realistic about the resources available to put a test to use. It also considers the time, the money, the expertise, and the personnel, and check the students what resources do they have. And another one, uh, these are some of our familiar teleconferencing tool, like for example, the Zoom, the Google Meet, the Microsoft Teams, and the phone calls. These are some of the synchronous assessments. And the asynchronous assessment method are the Google Form, the Google Classroom, the Moodle. And the low resource and the low connectivity context can be in the form of Messenger, the WhatsApp, the mail, and the direct phone calls. Synchronous versus asynchronous. These are the places applied to both in-person and remote learning. When it comes to assessment, giving a whole group assessment at the same time versus a long time. Assessment done over time can give you a variety of data to determine student learning. What are the pros of synchronous assessment? Of course, one of the pros of the synchronous assessment is the range from brief one question, check-ins to longer summative end of unit assessments. All the students take them at the same time in some form or fashion. Doing the assessment in this way remotely means you have to be careful of students quickly searching for their answers. The instant feedback. Students know immediately how they perform with the quizzing app. It adjusts the instruction based on the students' responses. As a teacher, you can instantly see weak areas in the standards we are teaching and can adjust our lesson on our synchronous assessments. Just-in-time support, of course. Struggling students can get timely support and feedback, and demonstrating the knowledge itself. Then, in terms of asynchronous assessment tools, when looking for tools to help with asynchronous assessment, ideally, these tools that provide some sort of insights into the learning process as well as the timestamps as to when students responded. For this reason, many teachers rely heavily on LMS or learning management system. Of course, the pros of asynchronous assessment are the following. Flexible time to process. Another one is not as internet dependent. Built-in reflection time. More focused on the process. Can be collaborative. Help demonstrate understanding more than knowledge. So those are just the pros of asynchronous assessment. The actualization reliability. Reliability refers to whether an assessment instrument gives the same results each time it is used in the same setting, with the same type of subjects. Meaning to say, reliability essentially means consistent or dependable results. Reliability is part of assessment of validity. Then, uh, of course, in reliability, we check the needs, the resources, and the programs we look for. Tests online can be given in manual form or professional journal with proven reliability for the use or guidance. And of course, find a good teacher partner for this. Now let's proceed with validity. What I want to know. So again, validity is referring to how accurate a study answers the study question or the strength for the study conclusions. Of course, the measures such as the survey or the test, and of course the validity refers to the accuracy to measure or the measurement. Validity also refers on how well the assessment tool actually measures the underlying outcomes of the underlying outcomes of interest. Validity is not a property of the tool itself, but rather of the interpretation or specific purpose of the assessment tool with particular settings and learners. Assessment instruments must be both reliable and valid for the learners. Therefore, reliability and validity must be examined and, of course, reported or references cited for each instrument used to measure the study outcomes. Of course, the purpose for testing and the test intended for purpose. Okay, the impact, of course, the washback, it should be involves the testers and the teachers. There should be a training, proper communication, and the consistency. Therefore, negative washback does not necessarily have negative effects. As soon as negative washback is noted, can be addressed. And of course, to ensure positive washback is through instructional planning that links teaching and testing. By selecting a test that reflects your instructional and program goals, you can more closely align testing with instruction. And of course, necessity is the mother of invention, as well a well-known proverb implying that when you have no other choice, since this is a COVID-19 pandemic, still we should be consistent to deliver the quality of education to all the learners and to all the students. We will find a way to do so. All right. And it signifies also that completing a task is necessary. You will do so by any means necessary. Necessity is the mother of invention. All right. There is no single answer that will fit all the students. Therefore, frequent testing is really matters, which is a product of better scores, greater achievement. The spacing effect, of course, the spacing effect is really important. It suggests that the ideal amount of time between study sessions is about 10 to 20% of the duration you want to remember the material. So foundational materials that needs to be remembered throughout a series of courses should be studied after longer intervals than material that is specific to a certain activity, project, or case study of the learners. We're all familiar with this, the Bloom's taxonomy and testing. It always depends on the learning. The knowledge part, the facts, the dates, the effects, the events, and the places. The comprehension part, the interpretation of information in one's words or the grasping meaning. The application of the methods, the theories, concepts to new situation. The analysis or the identification of the patterns, recognition of components and their relationships. The synthesis part, generalize from given knowledge, use old ideas to create new ones, organize and relate knowledge from several areas, and draw conclusions and predict. And the evaluation, make some judgments, assess value of the ideas, theories, compare and discriminate between ideas, and evaluate data. So these are just a review of Bloom's taxonomy and testing. It only means that when we perform online education, still, we should be aware of the Bloom's taxonomy and testing. Types of tests and giving of feedback, we have the following: the essays, the multiple choice examinations, the completion questions test, and the matching questions. They have different pros and cons, which are flashed on our screens, which a matter of has an importance in delivering the online education. Of course, the scheduling. If there is an ideal schedule for administering the exam, the number of days, the length of exams, or the type of exams. Regardless of how many days are scheduled for a given exam, the majority of the students come during the last day that the exam is available. The available length of an exam given during the regular semester should be equivalent to one class period. Typically, that's 50 minutes. For some junior high schools, elementary, primary education, and of course to senior high school. To best ensure a 50-minute exam, the faculty member or the teacher should be able to complete the test in 20 minutes or less to check the reliability and validity of your exam or your examination. How to avoid or reduce cheating on online assessments? If the mode of cheating is students obtain all examinations, method to reduce it: do not send out electronic files. Change your exams regularly. If the mode of cheating is students have a web browser open in another page and they look up answers to questions while taking an exam, do not allow them, the students, here's the solution. The students, do not allow them that much time. The exam should be timed and only allow enough time for students to know the material to answer the questions without looking up the answers online or in notes. And when the mode of cheating is students have all their notes open in another window and do a searching in their notes to look up answers as they're taking the exam, methods to reduce it is time the exam more stringently. Giving of feedback, of course, when we give feedback to our learners, justify to students how their mark or grade was derived, identify and reward specific qualities in students' work, guide students on what steps to take to improve, motivate them to act on their assessment, and develop their capability to monitor, evaluate, and regulate their own learning. Because virtual classroom has a potential threat that the students feel alienated. Of course, using effective feedback strategies will enable them to identify and meet individual student needs, as well as to encourage them to participate and continue to participate at a high quality level. Of course, it should be personal, relevant, specific, actionable. All feedback should feed forward, constructive, encouraging, and motivating, encourages various forms of dialogue, clearly linked to assessment and criteria. It should be timely. And therefore, we need to develop developmental rubric. Developmental rubric are subset of analytic trait rubrics. The main distinction between developmental rubric and other analytic trait rubrics is that the purpose of developmental rubric is not to evaluate an end product or performance. Instead, developmental rubrics are designed to answer the question: to what extent are the students who engage in the program or services developing the skill, ability, value, and the likes? Generally, this type of rubric would be based on a theory of development. Advantages, of course, determine the level of development rather than the quality of a final product. Used when there is no expectation, then students should or could fully develop as a skill or ability during the course of their education or potentially ever. And the rubric can be based on relevant developmental theory. Some disadvantages: this type of rubric is more difficult to design, and developing a developmental rubric requires a close tie between assessment criteria and the theory of development. Here's an example of developmental rubric on your screens: an intercultural maturity. The challenges of an online assessment across subject courses, across your levels, across the platforms, and across the references. First and foremost, it can be more difficult to track and triangulate students' observation. observations, conversations, and the products to evaluate learning over the time. Students don't always have the adequate technical infrastructure, and authentic assessments and demonstrations of learning are more challenging in an online context. Finally, educators need targeted, explicit professional learning in online pedagogy and assessment strategies as we collectively face the new normal of K 12 education. Of course, the migration, this is just a challenge to everyone. Migration from traditional face-to-face to online education, we must embrace it. The acclimatization is the beneficial adaptation that can be repeated. Exposure to different factors, we should also embrace it. And of course, not abandonment or no abandonment of the system today. It really matters for our learners today who are still interested in their education, in learning. So we should support them as that's part of our passion as an educator. And let me leave this challenge to all. Flexibility is the new normal. Flexibility is not always comfortable. Stretching is not always comfortable. In the middle of the stretching, educators desperately desired normal, return to normal. But that would mean abandoning the growth and stretching skills. The flexibility of the teachers provided meaningful and worthwhile lessons that can contribute and create a beautiful, restorative new normal in our classrooms. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Hello. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation you shared with our participants. Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Appreciated. Thank you so much, IGP.
Okay, sir. Sir, now we are proceed to our quiz competition, and after that we come back again with our Q&A session. Okay, sir.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Dear participants, now we are proceed to our quiz competition. After a short video, please, we come back again. Dear participants, this is our quiz session time. You can join this session by slido.com. And today our quiz code is IGP quiz. To join this session, you have to go to slido.com, and after that you have to put the code, and the code is IGP quiz. And after that you can join this live quiz session. You can scan the QR code from the screen to join this session. And don't forget to mention your friends in the comment box. Today, top 10 quiz competition winners get their quiz certificate after this session from our official Facebook page. Our Facebook page address is Institute of Global Professionals. I request everyone to join with your full name. Please should directly print on your quiz certificate. And there is no relation between quiz completion certificate and international free webinar certificate. Top 10 quiz competition winners get their quiz certificate after this session from our official Facebook page. Our Facebook page address is Institute of Global Professionals. We start our quiz competition after 1 minute later. So join me, hurry up. Now 39 participants join with us. We start our quiz competition now, so be ready. Our first question is distance learning and online learning same? Is it yes or no? Option number two, the right answer is no. Let's we move to our next question. The design of distance learning should be based on actual situation of students. The statement is true or false. Option number one, the answer is true. Our next question is schools across the country are participating in distance learning because of a shortage of teachers. The statement is true or false. The statement is false. Our next question is which of the following non-traditional learning utilize both face-to-face and online learning? Is it mobile learning or blended learning? The correct answer is blended learning. Our next question is which is more important at this time while conducting online session with students? Is it completing syllabus or building positive relationship with students? Option number two, building positive relationship with students is the right answer. Our next question is what is the objective of the online training? Is it understand different challenges or to teach students at home during lockdown period? Option number two, to teach students at home during lockdown period is the right answer. Our next question is, what is the direct benefit of conducting employee surveys? Is it improve individual employee performance or early identification of workforce issues? Option number two, early identification of workforce issues is the right answer. Our next question is, which of the following is part of creating a learning environment? Is it task analysis or feedback? Option number two, feedback is the right answer. Our second last question is, you should organize to gain the best benefit from online classes. The statement is true or false? The statement is true. Our last and final question is, which of the following is not a traditional face-to-face learning environment? Is it teaching photography in class or teaching photography online? Option number two, teaching photography online is the right answer. Thank you everyone for joining this session. And top 10 quiz competition winners get their quiz certificate after this session from our official Facebook page. On the leaderboard, now Joel Barnas are leading the first position, and the second one is Samuel Sagario, and the third one is Jelini Caprira, and the following are Tema, Javier Tricio, Plomi Salvijo, Kali McNee, Queenie Rose, Sanjay, and the last one is Laika Joyce. Thank you everyone for attending this session. Now we are proceed to our Q&A session. After the short video clip, we come back again. Thank you everyone. Welcome back. This is our Q&A session time. You can send your question in the comment box. Our speaker are ready to answer the question. Sir, our first question is what are the main challenges facing students and teachers during distance learning?
All right. Thank you, sir. Sir Plomy, thank you for that question. What are the challenges for facing the students and teachers during distance learning? As I mentioned in my presentation, the in terms of the problems for the distance learning implementation for the learners, for the students, of course, the availability of the technology that they have, the specifications of their devices. Let's say, for example, if we're going to use an application or software which not works with their device or it needs a higher version of their operating system, that's a major issue with their devices. Another is the the support of the parents. If the students is just working alone, studying alone without the help and guidance of the parents, it will be a barrier to deliver the quality of education that they need to learn more. And in terms of what for the teachers, of course, for the teachers, it's just one of the problems that he or she may encounter in implementing the distance learning is the the multitasking activity, since we are catering many students at the same time during the synchronous. It's so hard for us to have our attention at the same time. In terms of asynchronous learning, it's it's better modality in terms of synchronous, but the major problem here is what if the learners or the learner will not or the student will not submit his or her work at time, even though we set a deadline for that. What is our major consideration that we will apply, or what is the kind of system that we will apply, or the rubric that we will use for the learners who will submit their works late or um, hitting the deadlines. So those are some of the problems or challenges that we may encounter.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is how do we address students' honesty during distance learning?
All right. So again, as I mentioned in my presentation, the students can be monitored. It's in the form of giving them time allotment in doing the activity or doing the examinations. And of course, we all know that if we will tell them not to open different tabs or different browsers, still they will do that. So by means of time, that's the only thing or the only way that we can do to avoid the cheating mode of the learners during examinations. And of course, we need to change our exams regularly. Let's say, for example, I have two sections, but in this section, one learner has a friend in the other section. So there are a great possibility that there will be a leakage. So again, prepare set A and set B examinations. Always a double preparation of examinations, but it will help you a lot as a teacher and to avoid those kinds of acts of cheating of our learners. And aside from that, it's a form of discipline, giving discipline to our students and learners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is how can we measure or assure students learning during distance learning?
Of course, we will use rubrics. There are many kinds of rubrics. Let's say, for example, we gave an activity, a certain activity, a performance activity. So therefore, we need to create a rubric tool that will determine how to give a score for our learners activity. And those rubric will be of course, checked by our subject specialists just to know if it is aligned with our activity and of course with the subject that we are giving to our learners or students. And by means of the rubric, it will help also as teachers, educators to check the the activity in just one place using the criteria which are met by the learners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is why? Why should teachers give genuine feedback to students' output in online distance learning?
As I mentioned in my presentation earlier, the genuine feedback is really important for the learners. It will help them perform more, do more, engage with education, learn more, and of course, the the feeling that we are inserting with the learners by means of feedbacking has also a has also made them a big impact. Let's say, for example, I gave a word, a simple word, very good, very nice output. It has a big impact to our learners. So, although the learner's activity is just a simple or normal output, again, don't forget to give a genuine feedback. It comes from the heart, based on our rubrics. Give give a big impact to continue the education.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is how do you feel overall about distance education?
For me, the overall the my overall view with in terms of distance education is an alternative method to deliver the quality to all the learners. And of course, this kind of this kind of um, distance education, it reaches different learners who are in the far-flung areas. They deserve to get a quality of education. And as of now, in our country, we are shifting from limited face-to-face as of now, but we're still we're still implementing the online education. Although it's a double preparation for us, but the online education is an effective method to deliver the education. There are some learners who are good in terms of online classes, so we must maximize it and of course implement continuously the the online distance learning as per instructed by the Department of Education here in the Philippines. We are instructed that the online education or online distance learning will not be eliminated now. It will be part of the system since it was tested, but it was tested by the department for 2 years. So it will be a modality that will be offered soon, continuously, and be part of our curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful answer. And also, thank you very much, sir, for attending this session and giving us your valuable time and sharing your experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, IGP, and more sessions like this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, today our program name is Conducting Online Distance Learning. And today our program code is IGP 4432. The code is 4432. Without code, no one is eligible for certificate. With code, you can claim your certificate anytime from our website. Our website address is eduigp.com. After downloading a certificate, don't forget to celebrate with IGP tagging. Please note this code and the code is IGP 4432. I remind you again that Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe our YouTube channel because your advertisement encourages us to do better and best service to our lovely audience. Thank you everyone for attending this session. Stay happy and stay safe.